let me sing you a song about the people that I love, the poets and philosophers, the workers and the wanderers.
Hi, this is Joe Jencks, host of My Highway Home, celebrating music, art, culture, and community from the driver's seat, or wherever you happen to be. My guest this week on My Highway Home is Pacific Northwest, Seattle-based songwriter Wes Weddell. He is known as a frontman, a sideman, a songwriter, an educator, and so much more. A musical jack of all trades and master of many, Wes has been making music in the Northwest for more than 25 years. He is ipso facto a bit of a musicologist in the Northwest. He's also a go-to musician for helping many other people bring their ideas to fruition. Wes is also one of the directors of the Bushwick Book Club songwriting project in Seattle. In today's conversation, we'll go deep with Wes, specifically about his songwriting and the work that is nearest to his heart, which is using his music to lift other people's stories up and to help convey ideas through art, through literature, through songwriting that sometimes are hard to quantify. Stay tuned for some great music and some wonderful conversation with the one and only Wes Weddell. Up first, one of Wes's songs, The Gap.
Outside, it's colder than it ought to be. Looks like it's starting to rain. Dark clouds been rolling in and out. This one's decided to stay. Sometimes I go a little crazy when I don't have quite enough to do. Tonight, I'd plan to take it easy, but I'll just end up thinking about you. Another day here getting older beats another day off wasting time, trying to bridge the gap between what I say and what's on my mind. Bridge the gap between what I say and what's on my mind. When I was nothing but a stranger, stranger things would find me every day. Now my defenses lie in tatters, and everyone just looks the other way. Another day here getting older beats another day off wasting time, trying to bridge the gap between what I say and what's on my mind. Bridge the gap between what I say and what's on my mind. Tonight I feel alright and I'll take it. Someday soon, but I'll share it with all of the world. Inside, my heart drops like a thunderbolt, rattling windows from within. 5 counts since lightning hit the ground. Feels like it could always strike again. Feels like it could always strike again. But another day here getting older beats another day off wasting time, trying to bridge the gap between what I say and what's on my mind. Bridge the gap between what I say and what's on my mind.
Hi, this is Joe Jencks, and you're listening to My Highway Home, celebrating music, art, culture, and community from the driver's seat, or wherever you happen to be. My guest this week on My Highway Home is Seattle performer, songwriter, educator, community agitator, baseball fanatic, and Northwest folklorist, among other things. Wes Weddell.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I just want to note that this is the first in-person interview that I've done since before the pandemic, and this is crazy exciting to just sit in a room with a friend and have a real conversation.
Isn't it nice? Yeah, honored to, sorry it's taken this long, but honored to be the first.
Yeah. Full disclosure, Wes and I go way back. We've known each other and worked with each other in live performance and in the studio over the years. But as for many of us, the pandemic represented a time of greater separation in communities that we historically had more connection with. And so it was great to be here in Seattle live talking with Wes. And welcome to My Highway Home.
Thank you. Welcome to my actual home.
Indeed, here we are. There will be chair creaks and room sound, and that's how you know this business is live. That's great. You have been a really prolific songwriter. I want to start with your life as a songwriter because you are known, if anybody goes to your website, which by the way is wesweddell.com, Weddell.
Excellent. And Google is pretty good about nudging the misspellings toward the right place.
Yeah, but there's this piece on your website about frontman, sideman, writer, educator. It just, I love that I like the frontman, sideman. I love the visual image that puts in my head of like a profile shot. Not quite a police lineup, but you know, it's real because you have become known throughout the Northwest and up and down the West Coast as a go-to person, as a mandolin player, as for some people a sound and tech person, theatrical tech. You have been a musical director for shows. You do work with young people. You get roped into all kinds of things. I remember you telling me a story once about being, I think it was in Panama, and you had a guide and you had asked when you were on a ridge and they pointed out the ocean, the guide, and you said, which ocean, Atlantico or Pacifico? And he says, El Mar es El Mar.
El Mar es El Mar. It was in Costa Rica. Yeah.
Costa Rica, yeah.
Yeah, and that became Un Gig es un Gig.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but before we dive in, I want to make the point that in spite of you making yourself available to community through all of these different skill sets that you have, and that you, as a result of that, view the implementation of those skill sets as an act of community organizing, in truth, through the arts, the thing that you, I think, are most in love with and to which you have given the bulk of your passion really is your own songwriting, which is extraordinary.
Absolutely. Thank you for noticing that. It, once you say yes to this as career, it gets complicated because you start saying yes to whatever the first thing that comes along that fills a hole in the calendar. And I am unconflicted about the bulk of my passion going toward songwriting, original music, my own, but also celebrating others. In that community, where that community is local, national, or global. I don't need to hear Sweet Home Alabama again. I want to hear your song. And I think, you can get a degree in playwriting but you can't, there's only a couple places you can get a degree in songwriting, and there isn't this appreciation culturally for how much people who opt in to, who sort of self-declare I'm a songwriter with a capital S, how much time they put toward that. You tell someone you're a playwright, they say, where did you go to school? You tell someone you're a songwriter, you say, great, my 8th grade nephew just started writing songs too. Like, that's how the conversation goes.
Yeah.
And I worry sometimes about the sort of the jack of all trades, master of none, because I have sort of put myself out there in a number of skills. But I want to get better at all of them. But I had a really interesting experience a few years ago with a friend of mine who's also a capitalist songwriter and somebody that I became very close friends with because we realized in the first 5 minutes we met that we had the same vocabulary about songs, and we went, oh dear, we're probably going to talk about this a lot. And it was at a time where I was wishing the phone would ring a little bit more about side playing. I was wondering why I wasn't getting more calls for playing with other people. And this individual was getting those calls and was out one night and got introduced to a group of people as this guy who plays with all these people, not as a guy who wrote songs. And I realized, in the phone maybe not ringing for the side stuff as much means that people think of me as a songwriter first. And I should recognize or sort of note a little gratitude for that, even if it's still true that I wish that the phone rang more.
I don't think you're in any danger of having the other multitude of ways in which you give yourself to community and apply yourself supersede what you do as a writer.
Thank you.
You've released some really extraordinary records. Your songwriting is a through line, and the ways in which somebody like Tom Petty influenced you as an artist and as a writer may not be obvious to somebody within the folk world who may not be familiar with Petty. There are several of your songs that have in one way or another a very subtle homage to something in Petty's repertoire. And I like that what you have done by that is help people see Tom Petty as a folk singer. Rather than see you as a hardline rock and roller. And that was never more clear to me than when you and I went to a Tom Petty show in the Seattle Mariners stadium just a few weeks before Tom Petty died. And the sound system went out, and all they had were monitors on stage, and then they got Tom wired into the PA system for the arena. And he said, we're just going to keep playing You All Know the Words. And an entire stadium full of people kept singing Tom Petty's words, because this was for them as sacred as Woody Guthrie is for some people, or Bob Dylan or Joan Baez, or other legends of folk. Tom Petty transcended genre. And in the ways in which you write songs about so many different things and grab so many different influences from folk, from rockabilly, from straight out rock and roll, from other cultural traditions, you invite people to expand their understanding of what folk music is.
Thank you. That's a nice thing to hear. I have a lot of gratitude for my folks playing a lot of different kinds of music when I was growing up, and taking me to see a lot of different kinds of music as more and more of my age peers have kids and navigate when to take them out in public, exposure versus disruption. I sort of wonder, like, was I a polite listener at 7? Or was I asking questions and bothering all the people around me? But, what I know is that because my folks took me to shows, I got interested in music, and I saw that this was a thing you could do. There's so much neuroscience out there now about how the music you listen to it around the age of 14 kind of sticks with you forever. And I had the good fortune to be 14 when Tom Petty released Wildflowers. And so just as I was really getting serious about playing music and thinking about writing music, an absolute clinic was dropped right in front of me at the time where I was most impressionable to that. The way you frame that makes me think of a couple things. One is a quote that Dave Grohl had about Tom Petty, and that you go to Tom Petty concert and there's 12,000 people singing along for 12,000 different reasons. And that's something durable. And I think about it in the journey of my own writing, working to move from offering a song and hoping that people responded by saying, wow, you're so interesting. What made you think of that? There's a lot of ego there. And then at some point realizing that there's only so many people who are so interesting that they can't help it, and I'm not one of them. Bob Dylan in 1961 probably was one of them. Chris Thile probably is one of them. I'm not. And noticing over a period of a couple of years that the responses from live performance started moving more toward people coming and saying that my songs reminded them of pieces of their own story. That reminded me of this thing that happened to my grandfather. That reminded me of, this experience my mother had, and that, now they weren't projecting onto my story. They were connecting their story, and that was a much more lasting thing. And realizing that's what I want to do in narrative, and in the emotions of the music itself too. That's how I can resolve the necessary ego that's involved in sharing your own output with wanting the audience in the room to matter.
I think that's a really important distinction in why you make music and in the kind of songs that you write, as opposed to what is heard in more popular genres. Is that for you, it begins and ends with people.
Yeah.
The stories begin with experiences in the world, with people that you've met in your travels, with people that you have witnessed and want to study, a little bit just the lessons that their lived experience has to offer. And then you turn around and you give the music back to other people to shine a certain light on that. Speaking of which, I'd love to play one of your songs. We'll just dive into it and have you explain it after.
Sure.
But I want to play That's Not Enough from Nobody's Flag.
All right.
On a branch line siding in the middle of the night, it don't get much more out of the way, and you can never tell just what's inside of the boxcar waiting for its marching orders, like the purgatory of a restless soldier who only ever wanted on for the ride. I remember the sound of the engine humming. I'll be ready for the whistle when the next one comes. When you play the tape and backward, the train still rolls out of view. And I remember each day that each war ended. Remember the lines that we tried to defend. And you can bet your life I'll always remember you. And that's not enough. It don't make it any better just to know how it ends. We gotta get there together with the good times sweeter, 'cause we rolled around in the rough. I wanna stand on the edge with my hands on the wheel. I want a good backstory and memories I can feel. I want to cut no corners, hold each moment once. But that's not enough. In a hospital wing at the edge of town, they got bright white lights, bright blue gowns, and there's a story of a lifetime lying in every bed. The tension lingers with the change of plans as you cross your fingers and you wash your hands, hoping just for the chance to do it again. But that's not enough. It don't make it any better just to know how it ends. We gotta get there together with the good times sweeter, 'cause we rolled around in the rough. I want to stand on the edge with my hands on the wheel. I want a good backstory and memories I can feel. I want to cut no corners, hold each moment once. But that's not enough. Well, nothing is ever, but the world keeps turning, and they say it turns better. You're asking why, hearing just because. So grant me the calm in the eye of the storm. Grant me the compass to find my way home. Stare me down until I call love. And that's still not enough. Taken away on a flying ship in a cargo bay by a man who held his eye in the palm of his hand. He saw beyond the break of day and knew we'd be okay, and asked me if I cared to understand. I said that's not enough. It don't make it any better just to know how it ends. We gotta get there together with a good time sweeter, 'cause we rolled around in the rough. I wanna stand on the edge with my hands on the wheel. I want a good backstory and memories I can feel. I wanna cut no corners and hold each moment once, just once, and that's still not enough. No, that's not enough.
That was That's Not Enough from Wes Weddell's album Nobody's Flag. Tell us a little bit about this song.
So that song came from work with an organization called the Bushwick Book Club Seattle, and the premise there is original music inspired by books. Once a month, this organization puts on a live concert where a lineup of 10 songwriters, give or take, have all read the same book, and it's a different book every month, and offer an original song inspired by it. Love it, hate it. It's not based on, it's not a soundtrack. It's whatever inspired you from the experience of reading this book. And I'm now very involved in this organization at an administrative level, trying to be professionally carbon neutral these days and only take up as much space on stage as I can create for other people as well. I'm not sure I'm hitting the mark, but it's good to keep that in mind. But this is our 14th season. So the very first one was October 10th, 2010, the date of 10/10/10. And it was original music inspired by Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five. And Not Enough is the song I wrote for that. And there's a quote somewhere in that book, and this was the thing that really stuck with me, about something just it not being enough anymore. And I think about all the ways that that narrative and experience, or nostalgia ain't what it used to be. Knowing, if I knew that things were going to be okay, then that, I don't know, that might remove some of the immediacy and our tendencies to remember things that were difficult a little rosier than it really was, because we, at the time we didn't know we'd make it through, and now we do. That 2010 would have been not that long after my father had been diagnosed with a rare and incurable cancer. So uncertainty was all over the place in my world. He survived 12 and a half years with that diagnosis, which is, 4 clinical trials. the stats involved were so sort of mind-blowing that I made him a baseball card at one point. It was the only way I could keep I like to have the statistics in front of me. And, so we had things like clinical trials on there, but we also had, red herrings and misplaced medical enthusiasms and other ways of quantifying the experience. But
I remember visiting your dad when he was going through one of those trials here in Seattle, and you had decorated the IV bag stand. He was rolling around with him.
Yeah, it was Halloween, man. Yeah, right. You gotta, that's kind of playing the hand you're dealt. One of the things that's so important to me about community is what might happen next. I love the memories. I'll go down, good old day moments every now and again. But the answer to the sort of where do I want to be in X number of years question for some time has been right here. And that doesn't mean doing exactly the same work, but it means connected in a way where I'm excited for the events that and the people that I meet, and the opportunities that might come from those interactions. Like, why would I want something different from that? If I made it, whatever that means, what next?
When I lived here in Seattle, it was interesting to meet really world-class musicians who had built a life for themselves in the Northwest. And I remember asking one of the bass players that I knew, Kerry Black,
Great player,
about, like he would occasionally fly to Nashville and do stuff there, or down to LA or out to the East Coast or whatever. He was in demand, but he managed that very carefully and spent almost the bulk of his time, really most of his time, in the Northwest. And I asked him about that, and he said, yeah, but I already live where I want to be. The only thing that growing my career bigger from here can do is take me away from the place that I actually want to be. So why not put my energy into continuing to grow and evolve in this place?
Yeah. I have an ongoing discussion with another regular collaborator in my world about the scene here, and she feels very strongly that you don't end up here if you want to tour a lot. You can, and there are some people who do, but you end up here because you want to live here. Even with all modern conveniences, we're still pretty geographically isolated, and I'm reminded of that all the time when, especially in winter, when the entire country is dealing with some storm, and it's like 55 degrees here, and, and sunny. Whatever's going on, and it could go the opposite way too. Everybody could, be having a balmy time, and then suddenly we're iced out. But you live here because you want to live here, and you either complain about it all the time or you embrace it and find a way to make it work. And a choice for something is always a choice that, not for something else. Lives not lived. I think the older you get, the more that shows up in front of you. And
yeah, you and I have debated this many times because we met not long after I had left Seattle. It was ironic that you and I think, actually met at a Folk Alliance conference in Nashville, maybe?
Yeah, because you and I, scream Nashville, don't we?
Yeah. But it was interesting because we pretty immediately became friends, and we've had this ongoing conversation now for the better part of 2 decades, weighing for each of us on one side or the other, is the path of being on the road full-time all over, or the path of being on the road sometimes, but really connected to a community. And I think at times we have each envied the other's choices.
Absolutely. I miss being able to share my songs with more people. And you miss being around enough to have them know your name at the neighborhood pub, or there's column A, column B is full.
It's my sweetie is also a songwriter, and she wrote a line recently that just plunged into my heart, and it was this: the road not taken has greener grass because you left no footprints here. And it was just what I needed to hear on just the day I needed to hear it, because it was a reminder that even if I had taken a different path, even if you had taken a different path, we end up still being fundamentally ourselves on a different path. And whatever strengths we bring to it, we would bring to that. Whatever weaknesses we carry with us, we would still bring that to that path as well.
Yeah. I came to Seattle to go to college, and I chose the University of Washington because my completely uneducated and full of projection idea of what Seattle was like in 1998 felt to me like a better place to go play music than the other towns where I applied to schools. It's a completely arbitrary decision. Plenty of privilege involved in being able to make it. What would this look like if I chose one of those other towns? I don't know, but I would have shown up with presents, and I just can't spend too much time worrying about that because it's not what happened.
Amen. But what did happen as a result of you being here is a connectedness to a lot of interesting people and their stories. To wit, I want to invite you to talk a little bit about your song Carry On.
Oh, sure.
And this is from Songs to Get You From Here to There.
Yeah.
From that album.
Yeah. I believe my friend Joe Jencks sings on that record. But I did a house concert in Hood River, Oregon, in 2002, I want to say, late in the year, and that you and I played that same house a few years later. That the first time I played there was that host's second ever house concert, and 10 years later he was mayor of the town. And after the house concert, we went out to a homemade sauna on the side of Mount Hood, and when you tour and do house concerts, a lot of times you're kind of at the mercy of what the host wants to do. I mean, you can also kind of just be left alone sometimes, but if you want to see things, sometimes you just kind of follow the host around. And so there I was, naked in a very isolated place, and the fella next to me I was talking to, and I learned that he'd been a B-17 pilot in World War II, and he started telling me a few stories, and I didn't even realize in the moment how kind of rare that was, how rare it was for stories like that to make it to my generation. And these were not stories of nostalgia. These were stories full of ambiguity and complicatedness. He did not care to protect my feelings. It was a very real experience. And I feel very fortunate to have had it, even if I was, I didn't quite understand in the moment all of what was happening. And he lived for 5 years after that encounter. And we wrote some letters back and forth, and his partner also clarified some of the details in the stories. I used to read a letter that he sent me, or sections of it, before playing the song sometimes. But the thing that just knocked me over, that I remember the clearest, was he said that sometimes people would ask him, what went through your mind when you went out flying a mission and plane next to you gets shot down. And I don't know why anyone would ask that question. There's like what in this culture makes us feel entitled to a Reader's Digest "it's okay" one sentence answered.
Yeah, for sure.
That's got to be an incredibly traumatic experience on any number of levels. And but he said when people, when he was faced with a question like that, his answer was, "Well, we wondered where they left their bicycles." And in that moment in the sauna, me really wanting to seem, smart and together and on top of things, I could not wrap my head around this. So I just sat there sweating uncomfortably
for many reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. And I finally said, I don't understand. And he said, well, maybe they had a better bicycle than I did and they weren't going to be using it. And I just thought, all right, I just got real information from somebody. He was not it was of no concern to him to tie this up in a neat little bow. And there's something really valuable about that level of honesty that, I'm thinking about it now as I'm doing a radio interview. It's like that as I slip into, trying to say something interesting and tie things up in a neat little bow. Like the line between interaction and monologue. But that was such a meaningful to me. It was so generous of him to let me be present to something real, even if I didn't recognize it as generosity at the time.
I think you did.
He modeled something very real, and that was, I have a lot of gratitude that he chose me as worthy to hear it and experience it.
Yeah. This is Wes Weddell's song Carry On from the album Songs to Get You From Here to There.
We were younger than we knew, but the war, it wouldn't wait. So we packed a bag and shipped out across the sea. The boys, they called me the captain, and I called them my crew. And everybody else there called it duty. As the months began to mount, with the skies wounded in flames, we counted many holes there in our sight. But the orders came in steady, and we went out the same, flying for our country and fighting for our lives. Sing a prayer for those who are flying out tonight. Say a prayer that they might make it home. And if by chance the way should somehow falter, we must find a way to carry on. She was a Boeing 17, rain check to her friends, and I brought her back in 30 times plus 2. I saw wingmen fall in flames, I never will forget their names, as we wondered where they left their bicycles. As the fog began to drop on the northern German plain, and we could not see the target far below, we could feel that city breathing like 10 of us inside, who kept the secret when the channel kept the load. Sing a prayer for those who are flying out tonight. Say a prayer that they might make it home. And if by chance the way should somehow falter, we must find a way to carry on. We must find a way to carry on. Now there's 60 years gone by, and there's movies of those days. Sometimes I can't figure what we've learned. Well, my life is settled down, but my passions never waned. When I think of my old buddies, I still burn. 'Cause it's all so very real, and it's not so far away, and I'm not sure I'd do well just letting go. 'Cause the boys, they called me the captain, and I called them my crew. And history, well, history calls me a hero. Sing a prayer for those who are flying out tonight. Say a prayer that they might make it home. And if by chance the way should somehow falter, we must find a way to carry on. Oh, won't you sing a prayer for those who are flying out tonight? say a prayer that they might make it home. And if by chance the way should somehow falter, we must find a way to carry on. We will find a way to carry on.
My guest on My Highway Home this week is Wes Weddell, a Seattle-based singer-songwriter, performer, touring artist, jack of all trades, and yet master of many. Not master of none.
I'll take many. No, absolutely. Thank you.
Really an extraordinary songwriter and somebody whose work I respect as highly as any of my peers and colleagues in the songwriting world.
Thank you.
Wes has found a way to use songwriting as a very unorthodox form of journalism, something that my own listeners have come to see in my own work. And I think part of your ability, I'm now speaking about you third person and first person simultaneously, just for,
Ego loves it.
I was trying to find a quick improv way out of how I began that. But, Wes, you began your public life in what most people know with a grant that you got from one of the Gates Foundations through the University of Washington to travel around Washington State and collect stories that you turned into songs.
Yeah.
And it feels like that song Carry On is an extension of that work that you had begun earlier in your career of capturing other people's stories. But it really did set you on a path of using music and songwriting as a particular form of documentation of the world around you, sometimes very earnest and sometimes very whimsical.
Yeah. I've thought about that project a few times in our conversation. When I was at the University of Washington in the spring of 2001, I had a fellowship from the Mary Gates Endowment to and 15 credits of coursework.
Well done. Well
thank
played,
you.
sir.
The music department didn't know what to do with a guy who cared so much about words. They wouldn't touch me. It was history and geography that jumped on board. For that spring, I traveled around the state of Washington gathering stories and writing songs. And then the fellowship helped pay for the recording of that, which is a record called My Northwest Home. Came out late in 2001. I was 19 when I wrote those songs. I was 20 when I made that record. I was still looking for the rock band that was going to, make the world recognize whatever it is I thought I was entitled to in the world of recognition. And now suddenly I have all this attention for being a songwriter, and being an acoustic songwriter. I thought when we were talking earlier about the transition from people responding to your songs because they're interested in what made you think of that to responding to your songs because they see a piece of their own story in it. I have a pretty complicated relationship with those songs from My Northwest Home because it is so early on a path that I became, that I got deep into the weeds about. But you learn to crawl before you learn to walk. And there are a number of people who have been supporters of mine from that point, and those songs are important to their connection to my work. When I listen back to them now, which is rare, I hear too much of me in them. And were I to do something like that again, I would work to find different ways to share those stories. I encounter a lot of stories now where my songwriter mind goes, wow, how would I tell that? Or what could I do with this prompt? And my sort of community member mind says, this isn't my story to tell right now. or this is, mine's not the voice for that. I chew on this stuff all the time, and
Yeah.
when I was out there doing it in 2001, it was exactly 60 years after Woody Guthrie had his contract from the Bonneville Power Administration to write songs about the Columbia River and hydroelectric power. And I have a complicated relationship with the cult of Woody. And when the Seattle Times called me a modern day Woody Guthrie, I wasn't sure what to do with that other than be thankful for the ink.
Yeah. Well, our colleague Chris Matthews, she has been referred to as a modern day Woody Guthrie as well. So at least by comparisons, you're in good company.
Oh, sure.
But it's that's super complicated. If you ever have occasion to visit Grand Coulee, there's a museum over there, and they get into the story of it a little bit of his work. But somewhere there, I met someone who was really familiar with history, and he said, the interesting thing is he wrote 40-some songs, 50-some songs, a small number of which were actually used for the project.
I want to say 26 is the number.
26 is the number?
But I mean, don't quote me on that.
Yeah, but that he actually had the grant for a long time, and he basically kind of, screwed around for months and months and months and accomplished nothing, and then, sort of crammed for the test at the last minute.
I have heard that story as well.
And, it's interesting. When you were doing this project, My Northwest Home, it was very different for you. You took this very seriously as an opportunity. And I hear you when you say that when you look at your earlier songwriting, that you see too much of yourself in it. And I would just offer that this is evidence of growth. And if you do a thing for 20 or 25 years and don't get better at it, you should maybe look at doing another thing.
If the curve's not going up, it's probably going down.
Yeah. But I do want to play one of the most whimsical songs on that project. The Ballad of the Whitman Greeks.
There we go. Yeah.
Which is, both whimsy in your lyric writing and a fun homage, speaking of older folk songs, to the streets of Laredo.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, we'll dive right into this, The Ballad of Whitman Greeks, and give us just a short setup on this.
Oh, sure. Whitman College is in the town of Walla Walla, Washington, which most people only know about because, they remember Daffy Duck saying it or something. And there's an urban legend there that the reason that there are so many sororities at Whitman College, but not, or that the sororities were off campus, is because that an old law that was still on the books said that any more than X number of unmarried women living together was legally a brothel. And so the sororities had to live in the dormitories or something, but the fraternities could have their own houses. And it was, at least in 2001, it was still told, still believed, important part of campus lore. And even Google at the time showed me that there are a number of campuses around the country that had the same thing. It's not true, but I went digging, and Chamber of Commerce didn't want anything to do with me. This chronicles a little bit of that story.
That's brilliant. The Ballad of the Whitman Greeks from Wes Weddell's album My Northwest Home.
As I walk down the award-winning Main Street in a town made famous by many a cartoon, I spied a young co-ed with chips on her shoulder, cursing a story that she swore was true. The betas and cheeks, she cried with a vengeance. They have their own houses in which to run free. But that Chester Maxey, as mayor of the city, has ruined my fate with one simple decree. When he said any more than 5 unmarried women living here together constitutes a brothel in the town of Walla Walla. So my Kappa Alpha Theta sisters can't have their sorority except inside this dormitory. Don't you think that sucks? Well, isn't that something? I replied in earnest. I've come seeking stories, so thanks for the lead. And what a great folk song this story would make, that is, if historically grounded indeed. But neither Chamber of Commerce, nor city attorney, nor college official had heard of this tale. Yes, Maxie confronted the oldest profession, but none of his laws would land co-eds in jail. But they swear any more than 5 unmarried women living here together constitutes a brothel in the town of Walla Walla. So my Kappa Alpha Theta sisters can't have their sorority except inside his dormitory. Don't you think that sucks? Now on many a campus throughout the whole country, you'll find this same story of Panhellenic vice. But despite all that's happening, it's first on the list of the students who live in the city they name twice. But we know any more than 5 unmarried women living there together may not be illegal, but it's sure no piece of cake. And I'd hate to let the facts destroy an entertaining story, so I'll leave the rest of you set the vote process on its way. Yes, I'll leave the rest of you set the vote process on its way.
This is Joe Jencks, and you're listening to My Highway Home, celebrating music, art, culture, and community from the driver's seat, or wherever you happen to be. My guest this week is Seattle performer and songwriter Wes Weddell, and we've been talking about various aspects of Wes's work, if you're just joining us. There's a movie coming out later this year about a rowing team that was from Washington State. And it turns out, quite some time ago, you wrote a song about this very subject. The song is Miles to Row from your album Somewhere in the Middle. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Oh, sure. The Boys in the Boat is coming out right around Christmas, maybe on Christmas. And adapted from Daniel James Brown's book, which chronicles the 1936 University of Washington rowing team, which was also the U.S. Olympic team at that point, that won a gold medal in the 36 Olympics, which is the infamous Berlin Olympics, the Jesse Owens story during Hitler's rise. And it's a brilliant book. I think Dan's choice to use the story of one of the members of that rowing team in particular to kind of tell the story of everybody. A piece of that story is that he spent one summer working on building the Grand Coulee Dam. So let's just tie everything together, right? Yeah. I understand why the book was so successful and putting that team and its members in the context of the Great Depression, of Seattle's history at the time, and its transition from a frontier mill town to the explosion of Boeing and wartime industries that happened in World War I and continued through World War II. It's a great book. Everyone should check it out. And we did an event, the Bushwick Book Club Seattle did an event with him in early 2017. It was the same day in January as the Women's March, which I also participated in, and remember running into multiple people in the streets of thousands who told me they were really sorry they couldn't come to the show that night because they were going to be tired after the march. And so it certainly affected attendance, but it was a really nice event. And my inspiration in that way that Bushwick allows you to just take whatever inspires you and run with it was, we were about to experience an inauguration that seemed to symbolize a lot of uncertainty. And it can be easy to, I think, especially in kind of creative artist mind, to think you're the first person experiencing something a certain way. But we were not at that moment the first people in history to be on the eve of something that felt really uncertain. And I think a trip to Germany in 1936 probably highlighted a lot of those same concerns. And that's where I went with the writing of this song.
Yeah, really beautiful song, Miles to Row, from Wes Weddell's album Somewhere in the Middle.
Evening winds begin to hit the lowlands. Keep your focus sharp and hunker down. Darkness dropping closer every moment. Not a lot of time to mess around. Digging hard, digging deep. We have miles to roll before we sleep. Take a turn, take an oar. But no, we can't go back there anymore. Morning news spreads quickly through the country. Could have seen this coming if I'd wanted to. Darkness holding steady on the side streets. Not a lot of time to think it through. Digging hard, digging deep. We have miles to roll before we sleep. Take a turn, take an oar. But no, we can't go back there anymore. What do you do when you can't do it on your own? You have to choose to keep on rowing and hope that she keep on rowing, and then the next seed keeps on rowing. And if we all just keep on rowing, digging hard, digging deep, we have miles to roll before we sleep. Take a turn, take an oar, but no, we can't go back there anymore. Digging hard, digging fast. We have miles to roll while the moment is past. Take a turn, take an oar. But no, we can't go back there anymore. No, we can't go back there anymore. No, we can't go back there anymore.
That was Miles to Row from Wes Weddell's album Somewhere in the Middle. Wes, there's an extraordinary body of your material as a singer-songwriter that comes out of the Bushwick Book Club.
Yes.
Both your participation as an artist and as a writer, and also as one of the coordinators and organizers of the Bushwick Book Club. From the outside, as a friend and as a colleague, I think some of your most distilled and fascinating work as a writer has come through this, because you have to distill a very complicated story, or maybe complex is a better choice of words, in order to write a book or write an essay. To take that and downsize it, to shrink it into the length of a song, requires extremely concise narrative work. And so you not only have to be familiar with the big picture of the story, you have to be able to say, this is the one piece of it that I feel like I have a unique ability to give voice to. And with all of these songs on Nobody's Flag and Somewhere in the Middle, there is a distillation within your songwriting, within your craft, that is very finely honed. And it seems like taking on the challenge of consolidating other people's stories in this way has really given you a very particular skill set as a writer, and it's become part of your style and what you're known for.
I find it a very useful and effective prompt. I think I've evolved my approach over the years. At this point, I've written somewhere north of 65 songs inspired by books. And not all of those were for kind of main stage concerts. Some were one-off things in schools for book-inspired programs and things like that, or libraries. But there have been times where I've taken the prompt and gone very whimsical, something that is really for the people in that room in that moment, and probably doesn't have much life beyond that. And that's okay. That's why live performance matters.
Pursuant to the Bushwick Book Club stuff, I also wanted to ask you about the movie that plays in my head, which is absolutely one of my all-time favorite songs of yours.
Thank you. That song also comes from that first season of the Bushwick Book Club Seattle, 2010 to 2011. The premise was kind of new to the community, and that was inspired by the novel High Fidelity. A lot of people remember the movie, but there was a book, Nick Hornby, and my experience of reading that book was that's a hard book to read at 30 and single. I think I resemble some of these characters, and maybe that's not the most positive thing. And it also probably comes right in the middle of that my awareness of that transition as a creative person from, let's see if we can make connections with the people engaging with my art that are about them and not me, fundamentally, or at first.
Now we're back to what you were talking about with My Northwest Home, where you this became a pivotal point, a fulcrum in the line where you decided, okay, let's really intentionally shift the focus. Let's turn the camera lens outward.
Yeah, so the movie that plays in my head, of course, stars me, and I've got all the camera angles, there on one screen, and but if I continue to watch that movie, that's probably preventing me from being present in a real way. And if the thing I want most is honest, authentic connection, then I probably need to turn that performer switch off a little bit with some interactions and explore a little bit of vulnerability. I might be really good at saying the thing that I think you want me to say that makes you chuckle, but I'm going to be a guy that might be good for making you chuckle, not a guy that you can be vulnerable with and get to any deeper levels. And I was looking at that a lot, and I decided it was okay to make characters in the song a little bit pathetic.
What a beautiful song. The movie that plays in my head, and I'll note a line, you risk everything when you bring in a co-writer.
That is exactly the line. And so that's, a little professional inside joke as well. But,
but to me, that line captures both, to speak of vulnerability, some piece of your fears as a musician and a creative person, and yet what you have dedicated your life to. Not just as a songwriter, as a person, as a community leader in various ways. You have proactively chosen to keep bringing in co-writers, even when it makes you anxious, because you see the value of it somewhere. You see the value of it, and you keep risking bringing in the co-writer, and that's a through line that I've seen run in your work, personally and professionally, for some years now, a couple of decades.
Yeah. Thank you. And, I feel the risk every time still.
Here we go. The movie that plays in my head from Wes Weddell's album, Nobody's Flag.
There's a movie that plays in my head every day. Mornings, evenings, 3 matinees, and 1,000,001 things I should watch instead of the movie that plays in my head. The hero's a guy you might recognize. He's charming and handsome as me, and I cast him myself. I don't trust no one else to show you what you ought to see. There's a movie that plays in my head day. Mornings, evenings, 3 matinees, and 1,000,001 things I should watch instead of the movie that plays in my head. Now the script is a gem, oh, it's just the right blend of witty and thoughtful and right. But when I act out the scenes with the folk on the street, nobody else knows their lines, and that just won't do. There's too much at stake when you live for the eulogy, not for the day. Oh, it's safer this way. Oh, it gets lonely sometimes, but you risk everything when you bring in a co-writer. So there's a movie that plays in my head every day. Mornings and evenings, 3 matinees, and 1,000,001 things I should watch instead of the movie that plays in my head. And there's 1,000,001 things I should watch instead of the movie that plays in my head. The movie that plays in my head.
This is Joe Jencks, and you're listening to My Highway Home. My guest this week is Wes Weddell. Wes, I wanted to also touch base a little bit on a project that you did with your friend and colleague, Elisa Newhall. Mm-hmm. And this is a really interesting set of songs. Again, some whimsy, some earnestness. Mm-hmm. But the song that really knocks my socks off on this project is the Songs of Spring. Mm. It's the closer to the album, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful piece of music.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this was a duo record that Elisa and I recorded in August of 2019. Elisa is a quite renowned classical and operatic singer. If there are any gamers who listen to this, they've probably heard her voice in video game soundtracks. And she taught choirs in the public schools for a while, and did a songwriting project with students where she made them all write an original song, which I love. Let's start to build some awareness about these. Music is part of most people's lives. Who wrote those songs? Where'd they come from? You didn't, as a student, you didn't have to ever perform it, but you had to write it. But some of the students had the opportunity to record it in a really wonderful studio, and I would work with the students on their songs, and I would work with them in the recordings. And she started to wonder what would it be like if she tried writing a little more. And so we co-wrote this group of songs and recorded it, and then was looking for a good moment in 2020 to put the record out, and good moments in 2020 were a little bit hard to come by. And so we said, well, all right, we'll put it out in October just so we don't only bump up against holiday music when we send it to radio. And that was it. I spent 13 years working with and playing with a duo here in the Northwest called Riley and Maloney, which are pretty well known. here.
Well, and in other places,
other pockets of the country
Riley
as well.
and Maloney were very influential on my music.
Yeah.
You talk about records that landed in your life.
Yeah.
When you were young, Wildflowers was one that hit you in your early and mid-teens. Several of Riley and Maloney's records landed in the record player in my house in that era. Yeah.
They worked a lot in the 70s and 80s and then took the 90s off, sort of their first retirement, and then reunited in 2000. And from 2003 till second retirement in 2016, I managed them here in the Northwest and played mandolin with them, and really got to watch how audiences respond to harmony as much as anything. And the ways in which they're very intentional arrangements and live sets were very effective in taking audience someplace. So doing a duo project was something that was really interesting for me. I'm a strong believer in playing the roles that you encounter to grow your understanding. I interface with sound techs differently because I've run that job. I front projects, but I also side on projects, and I'm glad I know what those things look like. I know there are interviews with Tom Petty out there where he says, when the band backed up Bob Dylan for the Temples and Flames tours, it was really good for him to be in the band, not leading the band. He learned a lot. So that's a little context for that project.
The Songs of Spring from Wes and Elise's album Pushing Forward.
The songs of spring will always bring that newborn feel to everything. The days extend, begin again, and maybe this time will go better. The smoke appears the end of June. It makes the sun look like the moon. A heavy haze, the end of days. We used to hold out for our summers, but the seasons change just like we do. They shed their old skins and they leave us behind. We think of it all as a circle. But maybe it's better to draw your own line. Return with autumn breeze to wash away anomalies. The leaves descend, we pack it in and try to steer life back to comfort. But the seasons change just like we do. They shed their old skins and they leave us behind. We think of it all as a circle, but maybe it's better to draw your own line. And when December's through the door, you can count on the dark and not much more. Our candles burn, we sing, we yearn, and hope to skate by on tradition. But the seasons change just like we do. They shed their old skins and they leave us behind. We think of it all as a circle, but maybe it's better to draw your own line. The songs of spring will always bring that newborn feel to everything. the days extend, begin again, and maybe this time will go better.
I also want to note that you are an avid Seattle Mariners fan.
Yeah, someone's got to be.
Well, you know, ever the champion for the underdog. And I also want to note that your love of the game is significant enough that you have been sponsoring a Little League team.
Yeah, it's the most capitalist thing I've ever done, I think. Yeah, I had more people, so we had this team of, it started in, I think, 2017. We had this team of 4-year-old T-ball players who had West Weddell Band as the sponsor name on the back of their hats. Other people might be sponsored by, the local plumber or the Lions Club or something. But, so now I had a brand to protect. And in a league where they didn't keep score, we never lost a game. So that was good. But it was about a 10-week season. And I had more people ask me about hats in those 10 weeks than had asked me about CDs in 10 years. So, I figured I better make some hats.
I proudly have a West Weddell hat, ball cap at home on a hook. I will say that it has survived the wash machine on several occasions.
Oh, wonderful.
It has been well loved.
Excellent. Yeah, the company that makes them for me does a good job. They give me lots of different styles and colors, and they really I feel proud to have them as my supplier.
Yeah. That's great. So, Wes, there's 2 other songs on your album, Nobody's Flag, all of which are songs that come out of the Bushwick Book Club
all
work.
10 of those are inspired by different books.
It's just songs to get you from here to there, and Nobody's Flag, I think, are probably my 2 favorite albums in your catalog thus far. And it has to do with the sense of authenticity that I get out of those songs and out of the stories that you have distilled. As you mentioned, sometimes the goal and the job of a writer is to get your voice out of the way, at your personal voice, not necessarily your crafted voice as a writer. All of these are Wes Weddell songs, but you as a person are separate from the narrative that you are choosing to lift up. And 2 other songs from Nobody's Flag that really grabbed me are Too Many and Just Like Me.
Oh, sure.
Really different songs.
Yeah, very different songs.
But I'd love to get some thoughts from you about both songs.
Too Many is a song inspired by Dr. Seuss's The Sneetches and Other Stories. One of the other stories is called Too Many Daves, and it's a little silly.
A little poignant, too.
Yeah. And
it starts out silly, but it lands the blow.
And I think I wanted to. I just took the prompt of Too Many and did a kind of free write list. Like, well, what else do we have too many of out in the world? And some of my, timed free write answers were deeply serious, and some were also silly. And then I went for, let's just get a kind of honky tonk groove going and see what happens if we start listing them. The list song can be a dangerous thing. The sort of "we didn't start the fire" and "I've been everywhere." Yeah. And to pull one off, you generally have to lean on your muscle memory a little bit. I'm known for putting too many words in my songs, but
all hail, brother! I salute you. I resemble that remark.
Yeah. So too many is a list of things we might have, of things of which we might have too many.
Indeed.
Sky. Too many heads that are nodding in rhythm, and not enough folk asking why. Too many channels on my television, too many instant replays, too many motives, and lately I've noticed there are way too many people named Dave. There are too many salesmen outside my front door, too many noses in the air, too many recalls and too many strip malls. Too much is medium rare. Too many back rooms and too many smoke rooms. Too many think that they are safe. Too many stray dogs and too many high hogs, and way too many people named Dave. Too many banjos and Canada geese. Too much macaroni, not enough cheese. Too many ball caps and loaves of white bread. Too many reasons inside of my head. Banjos and Canada geese. Too much macaroni, not enough cheese. Too many ball caps and loaves of white bread. Too many reasons inside of my head. Too many mustaches, too many turns. Too much concrete and caffeine. Too many polo shirts, too many hopeless flirts, too many empty green screens. Too many favors I hate to belabor, too many gestures and names. Too many onslaughts and too many hot shots, and way too many people named Dave. Yes, too many favors I hate to belabor, too many bad one-act plays. Not enough Donalds and not enough Ronalds, and way too many people named Dave.
Wes Weddell, thank you so much for joining me today on My Highway Home. Thanks for joining our listeners. If you want to find out more information about Wes Weddell's music, you can find him online, www.wesweddell.com, WESWEDDELL.com.
Thank you, Joe. It's nice to have a conversation. It's nice to have a conversation in the same room.
Yeah, that's refreshing. I think it's been 2.5 years since we've managed to be in the same room, so that's fantastic. And thanks for sharing some insight into your work. And,
happy to.
It really is my pleasure to draw broader attention to your work as a songwriter, because it's absolutely sublime.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Smoke rising in the eastern sky, climbing higher as the day goes by, like a ladder to the afterlife in the promised land. All the chimneys in the neighborhood hold a secret and they hold it good. Are you sending up a piece of wood or something you'll want back? It burns, it burns, it burns, just like me. It can warm you on a winter's night. It can chase the shadows out of sight, or it can take away your heart's delight with just a single blaze. Like a lover running hot and cold, all you wanna do is hold it close. Why is it all the things that give the most can also take the most away? And it burns, it burns, it burns, just like me. It can pull you forward, it can push you back, from the darkest days to old Chicago town. Ash to ash, and dust to dust, and There's a baller burning way up high. It makes the difference between day and night, and it's responsible for all Earth's life, or so they say. And then someday when his race is run, it'll finish with an explosion. And I tell you, when my time is come, I'm also going out that way. And it burns, it burns, it burns, it burns, just like me.
This is Joe Jencks, and you've been listening to My Highway Home, celebrating music, art, culture, and community from the driver's seat, or wherever you happen to be. My guest this week has been Weddell, Seattle-based performer and songwriter, artist extraordinaire. What a delight to have conversation with him, and thanks so much for staying tuned in. My Highway Home is a production of Joe Jencks and Turtle Bear Music. All interviews, copyright 2023, Joe Jencks, Turtle Bear Music. Many thanks to Ron Lesko and Folk Music Notebook, Charlie Pilzer, and Tonal Park Studios in Tacoma Park, and to all of you for supporting independent music thought, ideas, and programming through Folk Music Notebook. For more information, please visit joejencks.com, JOEJENCKS.com. And please stay tuned for more great music coming right up.